Conservatives were not happy with Ted Cruz's statements on the anniversary of the January 6th Capitol riots. Now, he, of course, referred to this attack on the Capitol as an act of domestic terrorism, which he would actually be correct. Nonetheless, after massive conservative backlash from Tucker Carlson, Ted Cruz decided to go in his program and essentially beg and grovel like a sad baby. Watch.
You called this a terror attack when by no definition was it a terror attack. That's a lie. You told that lie on purpose, and I'm wondering why you did.
It was sloppy, and it was frankly dumb. And
I don't buy that. Whoa, 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 whoa. I don't buy that. Look, I've known you a long time, since before you went to the Senate. You were a Supreme Court contender. You take words as seriously as any man who's ever served in the Senate. And every word you repeated that phrase. I do not believe that you used that accidentally. I just don't.
So, Tucker, as a result of my sloppy phrasing, it's caused a lot of people to misunderstand what I meant. Let me tell you what I meant to say. I wasn't saying the millions of patriots across the country supporting President Trump are terrorists, and that's what a lot of people have misunderstood that comment.
Wait a second, but even your wait, but hold on. What you just said doesn't make sense. So if somebody assaults a cop, he should be charged and go to jail. I couldn't agree more. We have said that for years. But that person's still not a terrorist. How many people have been charged with terrorism on January 6th?
Like, I agree with you. It was a mistake to say that yesterday. I get why people were angry.
I guess I just don't believe you. And I mean that with respect, because I have such respect for your acuity and your precision. And I've seen it on display. I've covered you as a reporter. I know how you speak. And you have sat there for a year and watched people use language to distort the events of that day. Intentionally. Insurrection. Coup.
And of course, it
terrorism.
Was an insurrection. Saying it's an insurrection is a political term. It's a lie. I've repeatedly denounced it. And when it comes to, look, I was focusing on what I normally say. That what you aired was a little 15-second snippet. What I normally say is violence is wrong, peaceful protest is right. If you engage in violence, you should be prosecuted. If you're speaking, you have a right to speak. I say that all the time.
Well, amen, and I agree.
In that snippet. Of course, it would be ridiculous for me to be saying that the people standing up and protesting to follow the law were somehow terrorists. I was talking about people who commit violence against cops, and you and I both agree, if you commit violence against cops, you should go to jail.
Yeah, but you're not a terrorist. You know, you're not. You're a guy who assaulted a cop. Okay, so there's a legal difference, as you well know, better than I do, since you were actually in the running for the Supreme Court. And there's a moral difference between a guy,
Tucker, the reason I use.
All right. God, that's sad. Oh, that's sad. And Tucker Carlson's like, no, I don't believe you. How dare you call these people terrorists? Like, I didn't. No. If you attack cops, well, then maybe, but then the people that were standing up, those were not terrorists. What is it, Ted? Which one? Which one was it, Ted? I mean, it's so sad. It's so sad. I'm not sure, I mean, if I've ever seen anything sadder. Well, okay, let me just take that back for a second, because again, the phone banking for Donald Trump was super sad. Especially after Donald Trump had called his wife ugly and said that his dad had killed JFK. I'm serious. But look, here's the thing. Ted Cruz, it's like he can't help himself. He's got to love being humiliated in public. I don't know. But it is incredibly sad and pathetic. And I remember saying, I was like, well, what's the point? He's just gonna get absolutely destroyed. And of course, that's exactly what happened. Who knew? So now, look, let's kind of point out, though, that Ted Cruz was originally correct in calling the people in the Capitol riots domestic terrorists. In fact, look, and here's the thing, right? So you heard the part in the video where Tucker's like, well, nobody got charged with domestic terrorism. Well, there's a reason for that. Let me explain. Current law, that's federal law, defines domestic terrorism as criminal acts in the United States that are dangerous to human life, that appear intended to intimidate or coerce a civilian population, to influence government policy by intimidation or coercion, or to affect the conduct of a government by mass destruction, assassination, or kidnapping. Now, yeah, I don't need to remind you that some of the people that were trying to get that had gotten into the Capitol, if they had gotten their hands on a congressperson, which they were trying to do, well, some of them, of course, had ways to try to restrain such persons. They were chanting, "Hang Mike Pence." Okay. And then, thankfully they did not get their hands on any member of Congress. But they did destroy property. They destroyed windows, doors, barricades, literally shit on the floors, smeared it around. And so you look at it, by that definition, that's terrorism. It is. It is. But then to address the question, well, if it's terrorism, how come nobody's being charged with terrorism? Because it turns out in the United States, there is a loophole. There is a loophole. Under U.S. law, there's actually no criminal penalties attached to that statute. So even if you do something that fits the definition of domestic terrorism, you're not going to be charged with domestic terrorism. Now, the only way that you would be actually charged with domestic terrorism is if they can prove that there is a link to a foreign government. Or, for example, if you're a Muslim, and they could say, oh, well, you're working with ISIS or a terror group, and not just a government, but also a terror group like ISIS or Al-Qaeda. If they can prove that you have links or suggest that you have links, then you could be arrested for domestic terrorism. But if you're a white nationalist, you're a white supremacist, or whatever, then no, you're not able to be arrested for or charged with domestic terrorism. So you see how that works. So now again, if you did, if somebody did something like January 6th or something else, but were connected with ISIS or something to do with Islam, then you're going to be labeled a domestic terrorist. That's how this law works. Now, in the case of the Capitol rioters, the FBI is relying on other criminal statutes, such as those dealing with murder or assault, to charge defendants. And so that's what's going on here. So now there's another wrinkle to this, because there's actually a really big conversation going on in the Capitol about changing the domestic terrorism laws. So that there are civil rights groups that are saying, actually, no, we probably shouldn't expand domestic terrorism laws, because that can cause some issues with, citizens, for example, due process, etc. In fact, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is actually against this. Here's what she said, quote, "Our problems on Wednesday, or January 6th, weren't that there weren't enough laws, resources, or intelligence. We had them, and they were not used." This was, again, in response to calls for enactment of a new domestic terrorism law. Now, Tucker Carlson, the thing that Tucker Carlson is doing is that he knows this. He's not a dumb person. He really isn't. No, he knows what he's doing. And so what he's doing is he's basically intentionally using the fact that we don't have criminal statutes for this kind of domestic terrorism, for perhaps good reason. And that is arguable, because, again, if you think about it this way, that's a lot of power in the hands of the government. Now, that could be very dangerous if you put it in the wrong hands. And, for example, you can look at the drone program, right? And just think about it, right? The drone program has killed American citizens overseas in charges of terrorism. And so that's without due process. So now, imagine that power in the hands domestically for people that are inside the United States that are not linked with any terror group, but have beat up cops or police or whatever, or done whatever action the government might not be in favor of. Maybe like protest pipelines. Well, now you're talking like, oh, those people could be labeled domestic terrorists because they have an agenda, a political agenda, and they possibly could be putting people in harm's way. So again, there's a little bit of a slippery slope here that is to be careful of, especially when you consider it being in the hands of the establishment, the corporate establishment or Republicans, which might be even worse. So, yeah. Now, here's the thing. So what they're doing here, Tucker Carlson, is using that definition to downplay what happened on January 6th, which it is actually incredibly, disturbing what happened. So now Ted Cruz, he knows Ted Cruz is correct, but his audience, and he has fed this idea to the audience that it's only Muslims that can be terrorists. And so, look, it's basically the Family Guy meme, where he holds up the color chart. Okay is white, not okay is brown. And that's it. And that's their terrorism chart at this point, even though they've done the same thing. Okay? So they're literally living a meme. Now, another point here that I think is important to point out is that this is a case of political correctness. So now, factually, again, according to their own, the FBI's own definition of terrorism, these people on January 6th did a terrorism. Now, calling it a terrorism, however, for the right is not politically correct. It is factually correct, but not politically correct. And so here's the thing, too. They would use this if there were new domestic terrorism laws that were passed. You don't think that Republicans would use it against BLM and Antifa? Of course they would. Absolutely. Absolutely. They would use that definition against them. In fact, they already do. Ted Cruz is like, oh, yeah, no, they're terrorists. Those people are terrorists. But the January 6th people, no, they're not terrorists. Unless you're beating up on cops, which, a lot of the people in January 6th were, but they're not terrorists, though. They're not terrorists. They're rioters. That's what they are. Not insurrectionists, no. But they're rioters, sure. And so understand that this is like a big exercise in political correctness. And that's what it is. And so the real crime of Ted Cruz and why he got obliterated by Tucker Carlson there is the fact that he, for a moment, was not politically correct. And he failed to realize how politically correct the right wing under Tucker Carlson has become. And that's why he went groveling to Tucker Carlson.